Well, hello again. I thought today we'd make a video about NPM, what it is, how we can use it, and why you'd want to use it. So as you can see here, NPM stands for Nefarious Plastic Mannequins. It doesn't actually. The joke here is that NPM doesn't actually stand for anything, but people commonly refer to it as Node Package Manager, so if you hear that term or NPM, they're referring to the same thing. So just for gags here, you can keep clicking on this title and you get different meanings for this acronym of NPM. Alright, so let's start off with a brief explanation of exactly what NPM is. A package manager is just a tool that makes it really easy to install, update, and uninstall different libraries, frameworks, and other kinds of packages. Your next question might be, what is a package? Well, a package is nothing more than just some modular code that is reusable that we can install and import into different projects that we're working on. So what is an example of a package? Well, let's search for one. Let's search for jQuery. So this is a jQuery package. It's basically a JavaScript library that can be installed and imported into any project that you want. But if you've used jQuery, you've probably commonly installed it something like this, using a script tag. So what does this have to do with NPM? NPM is just a new modern way to install these packages like jQuery that your project may depend on. One of the reasons why we're moving away from using multiple script tags to import our dependencies is because when a website loads, the browser will need to make multiple requests to all of these dependencies, which can significantly slow down the loading of your site. And as our websites and web apps become more and more complex, we require more and more dependencies, and very quickly this script tag model becomes unsustainable. So with the help of NPM, in combination with a bundler like Webpack, we can easily import all the dependencies that we need and then bundle our project so that it's optimized for production. Now, if the word Webpack scares you, or you've been using it but the config file does your head in, then don't worry, I'll be making a video about that very shortly. So the next logical question is, how do we actually install NPM? Well, NPM automatically comes installed with Node.js. So let's go ahead and install Node.js. So if we go to nodejs.org, we can just simply click on the download link here. This is just going to download an installer file that you can click on and then just run through the installer like any other program. Now, if you're working on a Mac and you've got brew installed, then you could also just type in brew install npm and that'll install Node and npm for you. Now, to check that you have both Node and npm installed properly, you can type in node-v. These are the current versions that I'm using. You might have different versions if you've installed these on a later date. So now that we've got everything installed, we can start using npm. So let's open up a new project folder. I've just called mine npm tutorial. Obviously, yours will probably be something more meaningful. So the first thing that we need to do is initialize npm, and we can do that by saying npm init. This is going to start initializing npm, and it's going to ask you a few questions about your project. So the first thing that it'll ask is what your package name is, and then the version number of your package, the description, the entry point, the test command, the git repository, keywords, etc. And by hitting enter a couple of times, we're just accepting all of the defaults. Then it's going to ask, is this okay? And we can say yes. Now we can skip over that process if we just want to initialize our project with all of the defaults. And so to do that, all we need to do is npm init-y to accept all of the default values. So if we run that now, you'll see that we've initialized our project accepting all of the default options. So what you might have noticed is that we have this package.json file that's been created. So let's have a look at what that is. So because we've just accepted all of those default values from npm, this is just a default summary of our project. You can see that it just has some basic information like the name of the project, the version number, the main JavaScript file, etc. We'll delve a little bit more into what some of these mean later in the video. So let's try and install jQuery. To install a package, what we need to do is rewrite npm install and then the package name. In this case, that's jQuery. So we can just type in jQuery. If we now hit enter, npm is going to go find that package in the repository, download it, install it, and add it to our project. Alright, so now that jQuery is installed, let's actually go and have a look at what NPM has added to our project directory. So we have a new folder called Node Modules, and we have a new file called package.lock.json. So let's go and have a look at the Node Modules folder. So inside the Node Modules folder, we find the jQuery folder, and inside of that, we have all the files and folders that make up the jQuery package. So what NPM has done is it's found the jQuery package on the NPM repository, it's downloaded it, and it's now added it in a folder called Node Modules. Let's go have another look at our package.json file. And if we click on this, we'll see that we have a new property called dependencies, which contains an object that is listing at the moment one dependency called jQuery. And after that, you'll see that it's listing the version number of jQuery. So you can see that our package.json file is keeping track of all of our dependencies, and that makes it very easy to share our projects with other developers so that they can download our project and then just download all the dependencies that are listed in our package.json file. This also means that it's very easy to update and delete dependencies because we have a single source of truth about all the dependencies that we're currently including in the project. Okay, so what is our package.lock.json file then? Well, let's go ahead and have a look. I'm just going to close the terminal window temporarily so we can see the rest of the file. So you can see that this file is very similar to the package.json file, but it's a little bit more in depth when it comes to the dependencies. So you can see that our dependency jQuery is listed here, and it's also listing the exact version number that we're using in our project, but it's also saying where we resolved our package from. And all that means is where is the original source from the package. And so we can see that we downloaded jQuery from the NPM registry. And the NPM registry is a single place where people can upload packages so that other people can download them using NPM. The other thing that we have here is a seemingly garbled mess under the integrity property here. This is actually just a SHA-512 cryptographic hash of our package. Now, how hashes work is a little bit complicated and is outside of the scope of this video, but what you need to know is that hashes ensure that the package that we have in our project matches the exact package on the NPM registry. This means that we can make sure that our package isn't corrupted and that it hasn't been tampered with, so it's an additional security feature that NPM is providing us. If that's a bit confusing, the good thing for you is that you really don't need to be touching the package.lock file. You should be uploading it to your Git repository, but other than that, NPM will manage everything for you. If this file is confusing you slightly, that's okay because you really don't need to be touching this file. You should be committing it to your Git version control, but other than that, NPM will handle this file for you. Alright, so now that we have a better understanding of what NPM is doing, we can start using these packages in our projects. Now the nice thing is that we can use NPM packages for both server-side and client-side JavaScript. But the syntax that we need to use to import them is slightly different. On the client-side JavaScript, we have the import module syntax. The import syntax looks a little bit like this. We'll say import, and then we'll use a $sign because that's commonly what people use for jQuery. And we'll say from jQuery. And this is for the client side. And so then we can use jQuery like we normally would. And so we could say select the body element, just like that. Now for this to work, you do need to use a bundle like Gulp, Webpack, Parcel, or any of the others. Now again, I will be making a video on Webpack very soon, so you might want to maybe subscribe. So as you can see, it's actually very easy to import these packages into our project. So how would we import packages on the server side if we're using Node.js? Well, let's have a look at that. Node.js doesn't have an import module syntax, but it does have a require syntax. So we could say const $sign is equal to require jQuery. As simple as that. Because we're running Node, we can see this working immediately. And so we can say console.log, and then we just console.log the $sign, and let's see what that gives us. So that's giving us a function. And to confirm that jQuery is actually working, we can say body and run this. And we'll see that we get this error, and it says here jQuery requires a window with the document. And this is exactly the kind of error message that we'd expect to see if we're running jQuery in Node, because Node doesn't have a window object. So what we've learned is that importing Node modules is slightly different on client side and server side. On the client side, we use the import module syntax, whilst on the server side, we use the require syntax. Now keep in mind that using the import module syntax like this for NPM packages will only really work if you're using a bundler like Webpack. There are things that you can do to import packages without Webpack, but using a bundler is generally best practice. So you might be wondering to yourself, how do these modules actually get imported? We're not specifying a file path and we're not specifying a file type, and yet the modules get imported. So let's go find out where that's defined. If we go to our node modules folder and then to our jQuery folder, we'll find a package.json file. Just like we have a package.json file, each one of the packages that we're importing will also have a package.json file. If we click on this, you'll see a bunch of information about this package, but what we're interested in is a little bit further down, and it's right here, the main property. The main property tells Node and bundlers like Webpack the actual file and its path of the module that we want to import. So we can see in this case that's dist/jQuery.js. So if we go to the dist folder, we find a jQuery.js file. We can select that. And this is the actual file that we're importing when we say either import from jQuery or require jQuery. So let's go have a look at our package.json file one more time. So here we can see that we have this property dependencies, but we have a different kind of dependency as well. We've got dev dependencies. Dev dependencies are different to normal dependencies because they are packages that are only required during development and not production. Webpack is one of the most common dev dependencies that people install for their projects. Now again, this isn't a Webpack tutorial, but I'm just going to show you how dev dependencies get installed using NPM. So in order to install Webpack as a dev dependency, we'd say npm install webpack --save-dev. Now what the save dev flag does is it specifically tells NPM that we want to install Webpack as a dev dependency and not a production dependency. If we go check out our package.json file, we can see that now our dev dependencies have been updated. Now, if we go and check our node modules folder, you'd expect to only see 2 folders, but instead we have a whole bunch of different folders. The reason for this is that Webpack has a lot of packages that it depends on. So if we go check out the Webpack package.json file here, we can see that there's this dependencies object that lists all of the dependencies that Webpack requires. Obviously, some of the packages that Webpack depends on might have some dependencies of their own, and so they also need to be installed. And so you can see very quickly, there's a whole bunch of dependencies that we need to install if we just want a tool like Webpack to work. NPM makes installing all of these dependencies very easy because whenever it installs a package, it will look at the package.json file and see if there are any further dependencies that it needs to install. And so it'll keep doing this until it no longer finds any further packages to install. So yes, it might seem like this massive list of dependencies that we now have in our node modules folder is a bit intimidating. But the good thing is you won't actually be dealing with any of the files in the node modules folder. NPM will handle all of that for you. Now what's cool about Webpack and many other dev dependencies is that it lets us run commands in the terminal to do particular actions. These package commands are relatively common with NPM, so let's have a look at how they work. Now to run a node package command, we use npx. Now I haven't been able to find exactly what npx stands for, but I like to think about it as node package execute. If anyone knows what the actual acronym stands for, leave it down in the comments below, I'd love to know. And so when we run this, the Webpack command starts and it's throwing us a warning because we don't have Webpack CLI installed. We could type in yes, and then it's going to install Webpack CLI for us. Alright, so now with Webpack CLI installed, we can run npx webpack, hit enter, and it's going to give us another error because we haven't really configured Webpack properly. But that's outside of the scope of this video. I'll be making a tutorial about Webpack where I'll cover all of this in detail. So by default, npx will go and check whether or not a command, in this case Webpack, can be found anywhere in the system path. If it can't be found there, then it goes and checks the node modules bin folder. So what is the node modules bin folder? Well, if we go to the node modules folder here, and then we find the top folder called bin, and we open that, we see a number of files in here. So here we can see Webpack. And so this is a file that npx will execute if it can't find webpack in our system path. And because npx is just running a particular file, we can run this file manually as well. If we clear this out, we could also just say node modules and then select the bin folder and then select webpack and then hit run. And we'll see that we get the same message now. So as you can see, npx is just a shorter way of running these package commands. Now, the other thing to note is that we can install packages globally, meaning that we'll have access to these packages in any project that we're working. And like anything else, this has pros and cons, and the general recommendation is that you install packages locally unless you really need to install them globally. But just for completeness sake, let's have a look at how we install packages globally. Now, a package that might be installed globally is Node.js, which is a tool that watches for any file changes and then automatically restarts your Node application. This means that you don't need to constantly keep running Node and then your file that you want to run. So let's have a look at how we would install this globally. So we say npm install Node.js, and then to install it globally, we say -g. So let's hit enter. So it's going to start installing Node.js globally. So we can see that npm has gone ahead and globally installed Node.js in this location. Having installed this package globally now, in the terminal we can just type in Node.js and Node.js will start running. Alright, so up until now we've talked a lot about installing packages, but we haven't really talked a lot about updating packages. So let's talk a little bit about that. So at the moment we have our jQuery package and our two Webpack packages installed. So let's say that we wanted to see if there are any updates to our jQuery package, but we can easily do that by typing into the terminal npm upgrade and then the package name jQuery, hit enter. So npm will have just gone ahead and checked if there are any updates to be made for jQuery, and because there weren't, it didn't do anything. But if it did find updates for jQuery, it would go ahead and install those. Now, if you wanted to go ahead and update all of the dependencies listed in your package.json file, you can just type in npm upgrade with no dependency specified. And if we run this now, we'll go ahead and look through all of your dependencies and see if there are any upgrades to be made. If there are, it'll go ahead and install them. Uninstalling packages are just as easy as installing packages. So if we wanted to uninstall jQuery, all we would have to do is say npm uninstall jQuery and hit enter. It's going to go ahead and remove jQuery. And as you can see in the dependencies object, jQuery has been removed. If we feel like we've made a mistake and we want jQuery back again, all we need to do is say npm install jQuery. And npm will go ahead and reinstall jQuery for you. So as you can see, npm really does make package management very easy. Now the last thing that I really wanted to talk about in this video is what these little symbols mean in front of our version numbers for all of our dependencies. Now the way to read these version numbers is relatively straightforward. As you can see, there are 3 numbers that are all separated by a period. Each number represents a specific type of release. The number most to the right specifies patch updates. Patch updates are usually for bug fixes, so if there's a bug in the code and that gets fixed, the patch number will be increased by 1. Minor updates usually happen when a new feature is added, but that new feature doesn't really affect the rest of the code base. This usually means that there won't be any breaking changes in a minor update. The leftmost number indicates major updates, and major updates happen when a large amount of the code base has been updated. This usually also indicates that there will be breaking changes, parts of the code base will be depreciated, and new features will be added. The general rule of thumb here is that patch updates and most minor updates will not affect how your code works. However, a major update will probably introduce breaking changes, and therefore you should take caution when upgrading to a major update. So what does all of this have to do with these little symbols? Well, these symbols tell NPM what kind of a version update you're comfortable with having. By default, you'll see this caret symbol at the start of version numbers. This caret symbol tells NPM that when we do NPM upgrade, we want to be installing any patches and any minor version releases for our dependencies. But this symbol also tells NPM specifically that we do not want any major version releases installed when we do NPM upgrade. It is also possible to use a tilde in front of our version numbers. A tilde tells NPM that we only want to install patch updates and we don't want to install any minor or major version releases when we do NPM upgrade. So let's have a look at this in action. Let's uninstall jQuery and install an earlier version so that we can see how this caret and tilde symbol works. So we'll do npm uninstall jQuery. Now let's install a specific version of jQuery. To view all of the different versions of jQuery that we can install, we can say npm show jQuery versions. And this will give us an entire list of all the different versions of jQuery that are available on the NPM registry. Let's say that we wanted to install version 2.1.1. To specify that, we can say npm install jQuery, and then we use an @ symbol to indicate the version number that we want to install. If we only specify the major version number, then we're telling NPM that it can install the latest minor and patch updates for this version number. If we also specify the minor release number, then we're telling NPM to only install the latest patch updates for this release. Whilst if we also specify the patch release number, then we're telling NPM to install this specific version of jQuery. So because we wanted to install jQuery 2.1.1, we can now hit enter. And now NPM is going to go ahead and install jQuery 2.1.1. In our package.json file, we can see that jQuery has been added with the specific version number. Let's change this caret symbol into a tilde to see how that works. And we'll save the file. And now we'll say npm upgrade jQuery. As you can see, NPM has gone ahead and upgraded our jQuery package, but it has only installed the latest patch release for version 2.1. Again, the reason for this was because we were using the tilde symbol. Now, if we use the caret symbol and we run the same command, npm upgrade jQuery, you can see that NPM has upgraded our package again, but this time it has also installed the latest minor release for version 2. There is one other symbol that we can use to specify what version that we want installed, and that's the asterisk symbol. What the asterisk is telling NPM is just go ahead and install the absolute latest version of this package that you can find. So if we now go ahead and say npm upgrade jQuery, so you can see that NPM has gone ahead and installed the absolute latest version of jQuery that is available in the NPM registry. Once again, because major version releases usually introduce breaking changes, it's usually not a good idea to use the asterisk symbol. And that's why NPM very reasonably uses the caret symbol as the default. Alright, so that brings us to the end of this video. I hope that you found this tutorial on NPM helpful, and if you have any further questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to answer them. But for now, I'll catch you later.